Thank you for coming to today's event, an interview with Bill Rauch, Trials and Transformations at OSF, sponsored by ShakespeareAmerica, which for those of you who don't know is a SAU OSF consortium that is giving you in the recent past such events as Much Ado About Shakespeare in America, Multicultural Shakespeare, Women's Part in Shakespeare, a conversation with Peter Sellers last spring, and this fall we had Shakespeare in Prison. ShakespeareAmerica was founded by David Humphrey and Paul Nicholson, and I hope you will keep an eye out for impending announcements about events that we'll be scheduling very soon for next year. I'm David McCandless. I am Director of Shakespeare Studies at SOU and also presenter, programmer for ShakespeareAmerica. I want to introduce both participants in today's event concurrently, then they'll stride out on stage like the rock stars they are. So today we have Bill Rauch, who's in his, alas and alack, final season as Artistic Director at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival. And he'll be interviewed by Jeffrey Riley of Jefferson Public Radio. Very grateful to Jeffrey for agreeing to conduct this interview, bringing his consummate skills as an interlocutor, not to mention his wit and charisma to today's proceedings. As for the man of the hour, and here's the point where I extract my notes, my cheat sheet. I'm sure many of you are familiar with Bill's backstory. Only 2 years after graduating from Harvard, he and his friend Alison Carey founded Cornerstone Theater, a unique, multi-ethnic collective dedicated to touring the country to make theater with underserved communities, adapting classics in a way that addressed local concerns. Bill served as the company's artistic director for 20 years before leaving to become the Oregon Shakespeare Festival's 5th artistic director in 2007. So these facts are well known. I just wanted to season this introduction with a few facts you may not have known about Bill. Just a few. Did you know he and his husband, Chris Moore, met at Harvard while working on a Shakespeare play? Bill's first 2 jobs in the theater were janitor by day and usher by night, but on occasion, he also served as a dresser to stars ranging from Louis Jourdain to Robbie Benson. The third obscure fact about Bill involves Alison Carey, who in addition to founding Cornerstone Theater with Bill, is the director of the American Revolutions program at OSF. And probably enough, as children, Bill and Alison had the very same brain-adjacent tumor. Happily for us, they both survived. I wonder too if you know how many awards Bill has won. We won't list them all. They run in length to probably War and Peace. Here are just a few. The Margot Jones Award, the Theater Communications Group Visionary Leadership Award, the United States Artists Prudential Fellowship, Connecticut Critics Circle Award, Drama Log Award, Helen Hayes Award, Leadership for a Changing World Award, and the Zelda Fickenler Award. It's far more likely that you're aware of all that Bill has accomplished in his Can you get closer to the microphone, please? We can't hear you. Okay, so let me start over. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I'm kidding. I hope you at least heard the fun facts. That was a particularly favorite part of the introduction from my perspective. Did you all hear the fun facts? Should I repeat them? Oh, I'm hearing some dissension. I don't know. I think the last one was particularly interesting, that Bill and Alison, as children, both had the same brain-adjacent tumor. Did you also hear that he was a dresser to stars ranging from Louis Jourdain to Robbie Benson? Okay. All right. Good. Let me know if I get too loud. It's far more likely that you're aware of all that Bill has accomplished at OSF. Good? Good level? As, for instance, diversifying the repertoire with musicals, plays outside the Western canon, numerous world premieres, and a record number of plays written by women and artists of color. Indeed, Bill has been a real leader in the field of equity and inclusion and has diversified the acting ensemble as much as he has the repertoire. Bill has directed upwards of 25 plays at OSF, including most of those world premieres, many of which have gone on to achieve great success in other parts of the country, including New York. In fact, if you were to single out Bill's biggest accomplishment, it might be that he actually succeeded in raising the profile of the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, which, as you know, was already pretty high. When Bill arrived, it was one of the top regional theaters in the country. Now it's part of the national conversation. The world premieres that Bill has helmed here include Rauch, Fingersmith, my personal favorite, Equivocation, and one that deserves special mention because it went all the way to Broadway.
Thank you for electing LBJ once again with this award to All the Way. I want to thank the Oregon Shakespeare Festival and director Bill Rauch and Louise Gund, who joined me in this when my producing colleague Will Trice and I went to Oregon. We fell in love with this play, beautifully written by Robert Schenken. It then went to the American Repertory Theater under the guidance of Diane Paulus, where it found a home and where Bryan Cranston joined the company to tell this exciting tale of politics in 1964. Here is Robert Schenken.
Thank you. And it's a long time between drinks of water in this town, I gotta tell you. What a journey this has been. From the Oregon Shakespeare Festival to Boston American Repertory Theater and to Broadway. Special thanks to my producers here, my director, Bill Rauch, the finest director I have ever worked with.
So let's get started. Jeffrey Riley and Bill Rauch. Bill Rauch, Bill Rauch. Okay, I hope you'll agree that was a boffo introduction. We're now going to up the ante on the boffo because there are a couple special guests waiting in the wings to make a special presentation. David Humphrey, director of the Oregon Center for the Arts, and the president of Southern Oregon University, Linda Schott.
Good evening, everybody. It's my pleasure to be here tonight to welcome you again and also have a special presentation to make. It's to Bill Rauch. You are recognized for your passionate dedication to diversifying the company at OSF and for the training of young actors. You have been a great friend to Southern Oregon University and especially its theater program. In recognition and gratitude of your work for collaboration and partnership between the Oregon Shakespeare Festival and Southern Oregon University, President Linda Schott and I present this token, which is a print of a student that was an art student here, of our esteem with great hopes that you'll never forget us and you pursue your next great adventure in New York. Thank you, Bill, for your inspiration, innovation, and the outstanding creativity you've brought to Oregon and the world.
I had a very, very powerful transition experience when Libby Apple passed the baton to me. And I was appointed in August of 2006. My first season began in January of 2008. So there was quite a long gap there. Libby and I overlapped for several months, and it was a fantastic transition. Libby taught me so much, and I think there was great clarity about who was responsible for what. So we're trying to model that now, but of course the timeline is more narrow. Taki was appointed in March, so she was appointed a good, roughly 6, maybe even 7 months later than I was, and I'm leaving a few months earlier than Libby did. So our overlap is tighter, but we are going at it hard in terms of the transition. Taki is remarkable. I have said often since she was appointed, I think she is the perfect person to be in this job for the next chapter of OSF's future. She is an extraordinary artist. She's a deep thinker. She is passionate. She is clear. She's calm. And she's just a very, very special artist. And OSF is very lucky to have her.
So walk us through,
Yes.
because she did get here not long before the announcement of next season, the
Yes.
2020 season. How much was she able to get involved in that process, and how much of this is you saying, here you go?
My colleagues and I, Amritha Ramanan, who's the head of our literary department, and many of us on artistic staff, we've been working since last August to finalize the 2020 season. So we did the heavy lifting, but we didn't want to completely finalize until the new artistic director was in place. Taki looked at the plays we had selected and said, fantastic, looks great. And she's really been able to put her energy into the choices of some of the directors and some of the designers. But she's actually quite excited to oversee her first season being chosen by people who've been doing the work at OSF for years. She feels like that's a great, great kind of on-ramp.
So talk about that feeling for you when you came in a dozen years ago. Did you feel like you had a good set of training wheels? Not that you needed them, but did you feel like you had a good support crew ready to let you step in and do what you needed to do?
Unbelievable support, unbelievable from the staff to the audience, how welcoming so many of you in this room and so many others were. And of course, I had the huge advantage that I had been a guest artist for 5 years, and even a 6th year while I was a candidate for the job. So the fact that Libby brought me back so many years in a row, the fact that I was able to direct in all 3 spaces, I really got to know the players, both in the acting company and on the staff, on the board. So I was able to jump in very quickly because of that.
How different a Shakespeare festival do you leave from the one you acquired?
Well, that's a question for you and for all of you. I've tried to honor the tradition of innovation. When I think about what Angus Bomer did and what every artistic director since then has done, I feel like there was always great love and great respect for all that had come before, and a keen sense that your responsibility as an artistic leader was to take the organization to the next place. And I have tried to do that in my own way over these 12 years. As some of you may have heard me say in the past, I know where Angus's ashes are. And I've many times just gone and had a quiet moment, knowing where those ashes are, just to check in and see
Should we know
how I'm
where they
doing.
are?
No. But I think that it has been a responsibility to try to innovate within the tradition. That's been the goal.
So let's talk about the things that you wanted to do, how the Shakespeare Festival is different now. I mean, we can talk about, bigger budget, modernized facilities, the warehouse and talent where a lot of the scene shop stuff is done, or the costumes.
The production center.
Yeah. So I mean, those are the basic physical things, but how psychically and emotionally different is the offerings that the Oregon Shakespeare Festival puts out now from what it was putting out 12 years ago?
Well, I think we certainly do more new work. OSF had done remarkable new work for years before I came, but we've accelerated the amount of new work. We've introduced classic musicals on a more regular basis, certainly looking at classics outside the Western canon. The Green Show is probably changed the most radically in terms of that very eclectic festival experience that people have now that's both community-based and professional, both local and for artists from far away. So I think the focus on equity, diversity, and inclusion, which has been part of OSF's culture for decades and decades. We've tried to continue to amplify the importance of that work in terms of being a theater of the 21st century, and not only reflecting who we are as a nation, but who we are becoming as a nation. That's been very important. You talked about some of the organizational strengths, and the facilities, the production building and talent, the rehearsal center, the Hay Patten Rehearsal Center, the renovated bricks, and the greater access that the bricks created, the patron wheelchair elevator, the patron elevator in the Bomer Theater was very, very important to us in terms of access. So those are some of the things I'm proud about.
So when we get to the diversity and inclusion aspect of the job, were you concerned at all in pushing the envelope from where it had been when you arrived? And how did you basically accept it yourself and then be able to get other people to accept what you were doing? Because it didn't come without some resistance, I presume.
Absolutely. All progress comes with resistance, right? In this world, in this country. But I will say that, like so many of us in the room who consider ourselves white allies when it comes to trying to create true equity in terms of race in this country, I've been mentored by extraordinary people of color, some of whom are on my team at OSF, and some of whom are in the larger field. So I've tried in any way that I've tried to create a more progressive agenda at the festival, it's through listening, deep listening, and trying to open my heart to thoughts that I haven't thought and perspectives that I haven't had. And I think that's the unbelievably beautiful thing about theater, is that theater invites all of us to witness other people's stories and to recognize our own stories and to open our minds and hearts to new stories. That's what I love about theater, and so I feel like we have to model that in the work that we do. Not only the stories that we choose to tell, but how we go about telling those stories, who interprets the stories in terms of creative team, who embodies those stories as performers, and who is creating the infrastructure for sharing those stories with everybody in the audience.
Has anybody gotten really blunt with you and said, I don't like what you're doing, I don't like some of the efforts you've done, you particularly Shakespeare plays, I like the words as they are, don't mess with them? Have you gotten some of that?
Every day? But honestly, I will say that the faith of the audience in the organization is so profound and so beautiful. And of course, there are the very, very occasional, that's it, I'm done, I'm leaving this organization as an audience member because I hate this thing or that thing. But that's very, very rare. Most people, when they're thrown by a choice or challenged by a choice, in my experience, most people want to have the debate. And they want to say, look, this is how this landed on me, and I want you to know that, and I want to hear what you were thinking, and I want to talk about it. And I feel like in the process we grow together. When people say to me at opening night, what do you think of that show? I often say, let's wait and talk about it after closing. Because I have my own taste, my own feelings about a work of art, but I learn from the audience and how the audience reacts to a work of art so much more. So by the 120th time we've done a performance, and I've been able to listen to the audience response or get letters, get emails, have people grab me in a restaurant or on the bricks to tell me what they think. I learn about how what we've created is really landing. And that's part of what I love about the job.
So Bill Rauch, over the course of those 120 performances, to use your example, how many times will you check in and sit through the whole thing?
It depends on if I directed it or not. If I directed it, I go back more often because it's part of my job to give maintenance notes. If I haven't, I would say when I direct a show, I try to go back every 4 to 6 weeks. If I haven't directed a show, it's not quite that often, but I will go multiple times over the season. I will also just stop in. If I'm having a hard day, if I've had a stressful meeting, I'll just stick my head in the back of the Bomer or in the vom at the back of the Elizabethan or in a vom at the Thomas, just to 2 minutes, 3 minutes, just to hear a little bit of the play, just to hear the audience respond, and that inevitably resets my emotional compass. And I remember why we do what we do, and I'm so happy, and I go right back into whatever the stress of the day might be.
Particularly with the plays that you direct, have you gone back sometimes at those 4 to 6 week check-ins and sat there and thought, this is not what we planned, but it's really good?
Honestly, often. Our stage managers, the stage managers are so at the heart of the matter at OSF. I cannot say enough about the stage managers. We directors are anywhere from 6 to 11 weeks with a show. And then most directors, I live here, so I'm able to go back a lot. Most directors are from out of town. They leave town. And the stage managers then maintain those shows for anywhere from 6 to 8 to 9 months. So the stage managers are really at the heart of the process of maintaining and allowing the shows to grow. I think our stage managers are exceptional at holding the shape of a show in terms of what the director and the cast and the creative team built, but allowing it to grow. And the fact is, when you've done something 15 times, 50 times, you learn new things. And the shows do grow, and they do deepen, and they get faster where they should get faster, and they take a little more time where they need to take a little more time, and there are breakthroughs. One of the things that I face in my job is that a stage manager will reach out to me and say, an actor has a new idea, or an actor is approaching a moment in a new way, and I don't know if it's within the framework enough. Can you come and check it out? Do you think we need to reach out to the director about this? Maybe somebody could do something physically at opening, and maybe because of an injury or for some other reason, it can't be repeated for the 119th time. So the shows do grow. I mean, you know, all of you who see shows more than once, they grow, they change. And that's part of the beauty of the long runs at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival.
You mentioned those moments of emotional reset when you get in there and check in, and before you move on to the other things you have to do. How do you, as a director, maintain focus on a particular work when you got all the other stuff hanging over your head, dealing with the budgets and smoke and cracked ceilings and all the things that have thrown your way in the dozen years you've been here?
Rehearsal is the oasis for me. Rehearsal is a place of peace and joy. And I love rehearsing. I absolutely love it. I'm in rehearsal right now for La Comedia of Errors, which you're all going to come see, right? Please, please. And, those anywhere from 5 to 8 hours a day, it's fantastic. So it's never hard to leave whatever else I'm doing to go into the rehearsal room. I race to rehearsal. You
race to rehearsal, okay. So talk about some of the major initiatives that you have created at the Shakespeare Festival and the reasons for them. American Revolutions and Play On.
Yes. American Revolutions was an idea that I began to develop when I was a candidate for the job. And I think part of leadership is to hire people who are smarter than you are. And certainly, in the case of American Revolutions, asking Alison Carey to come and oversee that program was the single best decision that I made when it comes to American Revolutions, because I had a whole idea about a cycle of plays that would parallel U.S. presidencies, and that we would have one play for every presidency. And Alison immediately, when she was hired, said, "That's a terrible idea."
Especially with William Henry Harrison.
Yes, there you go. She said, you don't want to set up a parallel between the power of kings and the power of presidents. It's completely the wrong spirit. But she said, let's talk about what moves you about American history and what moves all of us on artistic staff about American history. And we began to talk about this country being born in an active revolution, and that so much of the struggle for the heart of the country is what do we preserve in terms of earlier acts of revolution, and what are the new acts of revolution that we need in order to move the country forward. And so that frame of moments of change, of past American revolutions, to look at how we shape the country in the future was born, through Alison's insight. From day one, the board was excited, funders were excited, the audience was excited, members of the company were excited. It was an idea that it felt like it was the right time and the right place. And of course, almost all of those plays have gone on and been produced elsewhere, all the ones that we've produced so far. And the majority of the plays have not yet been produced, which is thrilling because that will be a gift, hopefully, to OSF and to other theaters for many years to come, is all those many plays that we've commissioned that are still being written, that are still being developed, that you'll be able to enjoy for many years to come.
Let's then consider the fact that some of the things you're talking about doing in terms of representing the changing America potentially represents, if not in fact, an American revolution of its own, perhaps a slow-rolling one. And of course, at this moment in history, it certainly feels like there's a counter-revolution as well. I guess you can pick and choose which is which. But I mean, what is it like to work to try to represent an America of the future at a time in history when there is a strong backlash from an America that has been in the past?
Well, I think that our job as artists always is to offer possibilities. And every time we create a work of art and we bring it in our hands and we say, here, to the audience, that gift, that transaction is living in possibility. So I don't care if you're doing a period production set 400 years ago or 2,500 years ago, and you're trying to be as historically accurate as you can about a past era. You are in active dialogue with the present, and you are actively considering what might be in the future. To me, that is the nature of art. And that's why I love being an artist. That's why I love running an arts organization. So I think it's just a given.
I stayed with American Revolutions, but I do want to hear your thoughts on Play On and what the intention is there and what the reception's been for that matter, too.
Absolutely. Well, I think Play On, like so many interesting things in life, Play On was misinterpreted at the beginning. I think there was some really unfortunate press mishandling of the intention. I think that some of the fear that existed in the field when the program was first announced was the misperception that we intended to, from this point forward, only mount modern English translations of Shakespeare and never mount productions with Shakespeare's original language. No matter how many times we tried to explain that that was not the case, that these were companion translations that were meant to deepen understanding of the original texts, that they were meant as a tool for actors, directors, writers, educators, for the lay reader at home, as well as there was, of course, also intended a performance component where people might want to, if one of these translations turned out to be a very strong work of literary merit on its own, that we could share those with audiences. La Comedia of Errors is the first production at OSF that is based on a Play On translation. Of course, when we announced Play On, we also announced the commitment to the entire canon in 10 years, the shortest time we've ever done the 37-play canon. So, I was frustrated, I'll be honest, about the misunderstandings about the program. I have unbelievable gratitude that Play On happened. Louis Douthit led it so brilliantly. I am so happy that 39 Shakespeare plays, that 39 writers had a deep dive with a Shakespeare play. Like really dove deep, rolled up their sleeves, and word by word, verse line by verse line, theme by theme, character by character, rolled up their sleeves and dug in. I think all of those playwrights are better playwrights for that experience. And the program has been so successful, as some of you know, that it has spun off into its own nonprofit. So I am very proud that we were the home for the program to be birthed. But now Play on Shakespeare is a separate nonprofit. Dr. Louis Douthit is running it, and they will continue to go. Meanwhile, next month, we are doing a reading series of all 39 plays that resulted from Play On. And those are happening at Classic Stage Company in New York City, off Broadway. And Classic Stage Company and OSF are co-producing this. So it's going to be quite remarkable because anyone who happens to be in New York during any of that time is going to be able to go and actually hear wonderful actors, many, many actors who are OSF alums, in fact. It's kind of a who's who of OSF from the past 10 years are the company that are going to be reading these plays. I think it's going to be very special.
Over what period of time are they all going to be read?
About a month.
Okay, so not like going to see the Ring Cycle or something over 4 nights or something. Let's talk about just some of the stuff you have to do as a director of a play. When you decide you're going to do it, I mean, is there already a treatment in mind, or do you commit to the play and then think, well, maybe we could do it in modern dress, maybe we could do it this way? What leads to those decisions?
I am a director, and I'm a theater artist in general. I'm a director in particular because I can't do anything by myself. I'm useless on my own.
So acting is just out.
Well, no, because acting you do with other people. Mm-hmm. What I mean is, like, I could never be a painter or a composer or even a writer by myself because I thrive on collaboration. And I often say, as a director, that I'm an editor of other people's good ideas. And I think that's absolutely true. So for me, I may have an impulse. As everybody knows, Oklahoma, I didn't want to just do Oklahoma. I wanted to do Oklahoma looking at those characters through the lens of same-sex relationships. So I may have an impulse like that in terms of why I want to direct a piece. But in terms of the moment-by-moment choices, what does the set look like? What do the costumes look like? Who should be in this play? All those, just millions of micro decisions that a director is ultimately responsible for, I find that in collaboration with designers, with actors, with producers on the artistic staff. That's where I thrive. That's where I learn, and that's where I feel like I can contribute. If I can hear 10 ideas, I suddenly realize, I feel very strongly that it's idea number 7, and it's not 1 through 6, and it's not 8 through 10, it's number 7, and this is why. But I would never have been able to come up with number 7 on my own. It's because we're all talking about the 10 ideas that I'm able to begin to understand why a certain choice is the right one.
So in the artistic sense, certainly a lot of collaboration, but when you're the artistic director, a lot of decisions end up just on you, or shared certainly with the executive director. So talk about getting used to making decisions about things like, what do we do when the roof in the Bowmer Theater cracks and you can't use it for a couple of weeks and have to set up...
Couple months, but who's counting?
So I mean, did you have to, what was it like to grow into the role of having to make these momentous decisions?
I became an artistic director when I was 22. So in many ways, I've been shaped, probably warped as well as shaped, by being in artistic leadership for my entire adult life. And so I'm used to having responsibility, and I recognize it as a tremendous privilege as well as a tremendous responsibility. But again, even in those kind of leadership moments, it's not that I'm not willing to make hard decisions. I have to make hard decisions all the time, but I make better decisions collaboratively. I really do. And that includes those artistic director, executive director moments, those moments with the board of directors that are about very far-ranging issues.
So as you move into the new job at the Perlman Center in New York, I mean, are you going to be moving a little further away from the artistic end, given the kinds of venues you have there and the kinds of things they'll be doing? I mean,
You don't want to see me choreograph a ballet? Is that what you're saying? Is that what you're
can we
telling me?
do it now? Do we have?
If you'll do a pas de deux with me right now, I'll do it. All right. No, I will. The Perlman Center hired me understanding that I'm a working artist, and I will continue to direct theater, absolutely. But you're absolutely right that it will be different being an artistic director of a multidisciplinary performance venue, because I don't know as much about music. I don't know as much about dance. I don't know as much about opera. And part of what excited me about the possibility is to learn more. And again, like with Alison Carey and American Revolutions, to hire people who are smarter than I am about all of those disciplines and to learn from them and to collaborate with them as well.
Are you going to take some of the people from the Oregon Shakespeare Festival with you, do you think?
I am making no decisions about staffing until I live full-time in New York in the fall.
So as you look back on 12 years at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, I mean, you clearly love what you do. Is there any one moment above all others that makes you go, wow, this is when I feel like this was my time at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival?
Honestly, there have been so many. I mean, really, if not every day, every week has moments where I think, yep, this is it. This is why I'm here, and I am so lucky. I really feel that. I would love to give you some, beautiful specific. I will just say, I'm not saying this is the highlight. I'll just name an example of a time that was extraordinary. All the way back in 2012, we were closing Mary Zimmerman's The White Snake, which was a beautiful, beautiful work of art. Some of you will remember. Powerful production. And the same weekend, we were opening Troilus and Cressida in the Thomas with production parallels to the Iraq War. And we had students from Iraq, college students, who had never been outside their home country, who were doing Shakespeare on the Green Show stage. And that just closing The White Snake, opening Troilus and Cressida, having those students on the Green Show stage, there have been so many moments like that of just extraordinary juxtapositions because of the rotating rep, the power of the Green Show, the audience, just the emotional whiplash of the different kinds of work, the different kinds of stories, and seeing the work through the audience's eyes, just again and again and again.
Are there any major regrets? Things that you either did or had to deal with that you wish you hadn't, or things you didn't get to do just because you're trying to fit a whole bunch of things into each season and hit a lot of bases?
I have a lot of regrets, of course, because I'm a human being, and it's very hard to accept our mistakes and to be at peace about them and to move forward. And I'm very human in that way, and I struggle with regret. But I'm also, at my core, an optimistic person, and so I do try to learn from the mistakes that I feel I've made, and hopefully I'm making new mistakes every day and not just the same old mistakes. That's the hope. In terms of things that I didn't get to do that I dreamed of doing, I think that's part of the sadness I referred to earlier, is that I am overseeing this final season, and I'm so proud to do it, and I'm collaborating with Taki on her first season, but I'm very aware that it's now a whole series of letting go. I will say, speaking of La Comedia of Errors again, that I've tried to pack into this one project as many things as I possibly could that I cared about that maybe I hadn't gotten to. So it's our first bilingual work of art, about 50% Spanish, 50% English. It's the first time we have paired a classic play and a new play with the exact same cast of actors. So Octavio Solis's Mother Road and La Comedia of Errors share an acting company. It's the first time that we've shared a play-on translation. It's the first time we've toured a project to community centers, to low-income community centers across the Rogue Valley, as well as performing it on our campus. So there are a lot of things we're doing with one project, and it felt right. It felt quite magical. But there's probably it's my last season and I want to cram a lot into one project, a phenomenon of that as well, to be honest.
As an optimistic person and a theater professional and a theater lover, how optimistic are you about the future of theater in general, especially at a time in history when there are just ungodly numbers of entertainment options and a movie about a bunch of people in tights can make $2 billion in its first weekend? They're nice tights, don't get me wrong.
It took me just half a second, and then I knew which movie you meant. Yes, look, we will always need to gather in a room together to share stories. I love going to the movies. I binge watch, my husband and I binge watch any number of TV shows with the best of you. But nothing quite replaces the experience of being in a room with other human beings sharing a story. Nothing. And that will always happen. And I am heartened by many developments in our field. 2020 is called, for those of you who heard me and Taki talk about the 2020 season, we're part of the Jubilee movement, which is a national movement to get theaters to proactively think about whose stories they are telling, and to look specifically at more stories by women, more stories by people of color, more stories by queer artists, more stories by disabled artists, et cetera. And of course, that's the work that OSF has been involved in long before I came, that we have hopefully accelerated and amplified in my years with the company. So to be thinking about that in 2020 and seeing how many other theaters around the country are being more thoughtful about whose stories they're telling and how they're telling them and who's interpreting those stories, that gives me tremendous hope for the future of the American theater.
What was the first bit of advice you gave to Taki Garrett? Don't park there, anything.
I'm trying to remember the very first thing. I think the first conversation that I had with her after congratulating her, I've known her for 17 years, so I was, she's a friend, and so I was able to congratulate her from the bottom of my heart. But the first thing was to talk about 2020, honestly, and the first thing was to say, look, we've been working since last August to come up with a season that's balanced, that we think will fit within our resources, and that we think will appeal to the audience. With that said, change anything and everything you want about it. But I want you to understand why we feel these choices are balanced, and then you rebalance it in the way that you see fit. So that was the first conversation that I had with her.
What advice did she give back to you as you depart from here and head off to New York City? Will there be a season at the Perelman in 2020?
The Perelman will not open, the building will not open until very late in 2021 or very early in 2022. Here's the weirdest thing. I have known what play I'm directing next since I was 22 years old. Always. I've always known what my next show is. And we're taking Mother Road to Arena Stage in Washington, D.C. in February, which I'm very pleased about. But after that, I have no idea what I'm directing next for the first time in my life since I was 22 years old. And probably even younger, because I directed so much in college. So it probably goes back to, since I was 18, 17. So I'm a little intrigued by that. And a little panicked about that, to be honest. Nataki has been so generous with me about wanting to hear my opinions about everything. And I think we have a lot of mutual trust and mutual respect. And so I think she knows that I can offer thoughts without her feeling pressured to take them, and that I will never be hurt by her not wanting to follow advice that I gave, because she's got to make it hers. Libby Apple said to me again and again and again, follow your passion. And she would tell me, Bill, I hate that idea, and you absolutely have to do it because that's what's in your heart. Libby was so remarkable that way, and I really want to channel her as I pass the baton to Nataki.
So we don't know what your first play is going to be, your next play.
No, we don't. I may end up directing as a guest artist in other people's theaters during these couple of years as we ramp up the Proman. But I can certainly say I will direct something in the inaugural season at the Proman Performing Arts Center, for sure.